Hi, welcome to the Forecasting for Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brie. I'm a doctor of psychology, financial educator, astrologer, and founder of Forecasting for Success, a community of people improving their financial literacy to achieve financial independence. I blend my expertise as a former professor and financial intelligence analyst with the tool of astrology to help break down why you are struggling with specific money habits and the best way to form more intentional responses and choices when it comes to money, especially to help you feel more secure in your financial decisions and improve your money skills for building long-term wealth. Welcome back to the Forecasting for Success podcast, the show where astrology, personal finance, and spiritual self-discovery meet the real world. Today's guest is someone who embodies both grit and grace, from couch surfing at 15 to leading product teams at Meta and Google, from surviving instability to scaling multiple businesses and building a multi-million-dollar portfolio. Raychel has lived the transformation she now helps others create. As a certified trauma-informed coach and cosmic life designer, Raychel supports high performers, corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, and creatives who are ready to break free from fear, burnout, and default programming to build lives rooted in truth, alignment, and joy. In this conversation, we unpack how trauma can shape your approach to success, why intuition and spiritual insight belong in your strategic planning, and how to rewrite your life story without burning everything down. If you've ever felt stuck in a life that looks good on paper but feels misaligned in your soul, this one's for you. It was such a privilege to speak with Raychel, and I'm excited for you to hear this one. So let's get started. Hello, Raychel. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
Can you please go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, and that way we can find out more about you and your expertise?
Yes, happy to. My name is Raychel Hollingsworth. I am the founder and creator of a brand called Ray of Sunshine, where I am a certified trauma-informed life coach. I'm a cosmic designer and a happiness expert. And ultimately, I help people accomplish their wildest dreams. And I know that that sounds like audacious and odd, maybe, but really it requires a lot of working through some existing pain points and traumatic moments so that way you can really step into the person that you want to be. And I have been doing this, helping businesses and people accomplish their wildest dreams for as long as I can remember. So I mentioned this a little bit when you and I were talking, but I experienced my own traumatic childhood, lots of different types of abuse and flavors of that, and ultimately moved out at 15 and have since spearheaded my way into success, into rooms like at Meta and at Google, where I was leading products that ultimately shaped billions of people, billions of lives every day, and have since accumulated massive amounts of wealth and things like that as I move forward on my own business and passive income. And so I've really been all across the map in terms of like building these products and shaping my own life one day at a time. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago where I took a look in the mirror and I realized I had been stepping into someone else's version of success and started to take my own power back and step more into who I truly wanted to be and step into a more vulnerable place and invite in more flow and more femininity into my life. And since then, I've been working with people across the world to help them step into who they truly want to be and work through whatever has been holding them back, which oftentimes has very deep roots in your earliest moments and relationships. So
Very
that's
much.
a high level summary of a couple decades worth of work.
That was a very good summary. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. And I think it's fantastic that you're able to not only own your story, but to own your confidence. And I think that's so important for women and women-led businesses is to step into that confidence and use that and be unapologetic about it. So I'm so happy for you that you're at a place in your life where you can do that because you have earned it. That's how we should respond to successful women like yourself. So congratulations on where you're at.
Thank you so, so much. I that really touched me. Confidence is it's such an interesting thing, an interesting topic in that I think we expect it to look a particular way. When we think about confidence, we kind of have this male dominant masculine associated view of confidence, like going into battle or that sort of thing. But really, every moment of every day, you have this opportunity to allow yourself to light up with all of your unique colors. Looking at this beautiful light fixture that you have in the background, that I feel like is just the perfect embodiment of what I'm talking about here. But really, like allowing yourself to step into and own every aspect of yourself, and to, be kaleidoscopic, and allow those parts of you to be seen. And doing so, I feel like you start to attract these opportunities into your life that you never would have had you not taken that risk. And so I see confidence as really a series of risks and willingness to bet on yourself, on exactly who you are, to radiate your own authentic frequency. But I really appreciate your comment.
Oh, absolutely. And I completely agree with you. It's not just in how society might even subtly encourage us to have these more masculine aspects. It's in the type of language that we use, to where we might say, going to battle or some type of aggression. And it's just not necessary. That's not the only way that we have to do things. And so I'm so excited to hear more about you and your business in order to understand a more feminine way of leading that is just as empowering, if not more so. And so I'm just so excited to get into our conversation. I think one of the first things I was hoping that you could talk more about is, what was your mindset shift and how you were able to go from this very complicated and trauma-based, if you will, background that you had, in order to move from a more scarcity, if you will, in order to abundance, to understanding that you can step into your power and your authority in order to leave that story behind and not only help yourself, but also now help empowering others too.
Mm, Great question. I think the word that really stood out to me in that question was story, because so
Mm.
many of us are telling ourselves a story based off of who we've been that isn't aligned with the person that we want to be. And in order to really step into that abundance mentality, we have to start telling ourselves a different story about ourselves. And it really requires us to pull the thread in all of these different directions about how we see ourselves, our relationship with money, our relationship with hard work, our relationship with success, even our relationship with attention. There are so many different small components that are worthy of our time and investment, but we oftentimes don't pay attention to those things. We oftentimes think like, oh gosh, I really want $1 million in the bank. But then we're constantly chasing this idea. But the version of ourselves that has $1 million in the bank isn't the version of ourselves that's wanting $1 million, right? Like we're not chasing what we already have. And so our willingness to really step into a different reality and to start adopting new narratives as if we're already in the place, the destination that we would like to be in, is so, so important for our growth and our healing process. And, when I was first, it kind of exposed to manifestation work, I don't think that I had understood it as manifestations back then. I was like, okay, this is how the person that I want to be thinks. How can I adopt their mentality such that it can serve me? Because I know that the Oprah Winfreys of the world are not sitting there being like, gosh, if only I had another million in the bank. They're thinking, how can I be strategic about this money? How can I use this for the greatest good? And you're starting to step into a philanthropic way of thinking and living and
Mm.
embodying before you even have the funds to be able to do so. And so again, it's like shifting that mentality and allowing yourself to step away from what you know and to try on a different way of living, like a costume. You're trying on this costume, and I'm gonna just quickly go in this analogy, because it's like when we put on a costume, we feel different, right? Like we step into a different way of showing up just by changing what we wear. It changes how we think, it changes the problems we solve, it changes just the environments we want to expose ourselves to. And our mentality is the same way. And so just having that willingness to take a leap and to reinforce and every day to try on those new thoughts has such an outsized impact in what we're able to create in the world if we're willing to bet on ourselves.
I'm so excited that that is what you mentioned and share, because I've heard this from other successful women as well. And I think it's a very subtle difference that some people might not be paying attention to. And I'm so excited that you just emphasize this. because from a psychological standpoint, our brains create like ruts in the road in our mind. And so if you're doing this chasing that you're saying, this chasing and chasing down, you might not realize the type of energy that you're reinforcing, not only internally, but what you're actioning externally as well. And so you're right, this is a really critical shift in thinking that follows through with how we act and the choices that we make. And it's so important to not do the chasing down. It's to look for opportunity that comes to you to change the energy and have it be pulling towards you rather than you trying to chase after success or chase after finances, et cetera, whatever it is that you're trying to chase. It's to redirect the energy to come to you. And it ends up being a much more effective and efficient way to use your energy through the choices and actions that you follow through on. But it also creates a more calm or balanced mentality as well. It's a type of calming action when you no longer have to use your thinking and your actions to chase, chase, chase. And I'm so thankful that you brought this up because to me it's a really critical mental pivot for people to make. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for what you just said as well. It's when we chase, we truly do come from a place of lack. Like, I need this thing in order to feel whole. And that is just not the way that we start to partner with these universal gifts or the things that are available in the universe. I am mindful of the potentially spiritual terminology here, but really what I mean is like anything that you want, anything that's available to you in this universe, when we act like we need it in order to be whole, we subconsciously and consciously start to do things that operate from that place of lack. And again, subconsciously push away the very thing that we're trying to attract into our lives. We have to know that we are worthy and that we are worth the thing that we want, which requires a focus on ourselves. It requires a love for ourselves such that we're not chasing. We're just loving ourselves and being like, okay, what else? What else does it mean to love myself? What else can I attract in this world that helps to emphasize and mirror back the love that I'm showing to myself?
Absolutely. That's such a critical difference. And it ends up making a big difference in your life as well when you're able to do that pivot. Absolutely.
Mm.
I think another thing that I find so interesting about the successful work that you do is that you also use the phrase a cosmic life designer. This is really fascinating to me. Would you mind sharing and explaining what this is and how this helps your clients as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a trauma-informed life coach, as I mentioned before, and one of the healing modalities that I work with is psychotropic plant medicines. So it includes things like ayahuasca, psilocybin, DMT, ketamine, MDMA. And ultimately what I do is I help people who are willing to embrace these conscious bending, consciousness evolving substances as a part of their healing process. I think a lot of people hear about these medicines and they automatically have like a partying association with some of them. But actually, there's a lot of really beautiful, deep work that you can do when you relax your consciousness and you surrender to these substances that actually can help you to heal even more deeply. And a lot of the work I would say primarily that I do is actually with the plant ayahuasca, because I have found that ayahuasca has a very feminine energy.
Mhm.
For folks who are more familiar with this plant medicine, they can attest to this as well. But she is such a divine entity and works in such close partnership in such a beautiful, loving container of healing that people can really go inward and extract the trauma that has been stored in their bodies for such a long time, that allows you to really show up differently in every context of life. And so when I talk about cosmic life design, it's really in partnership with these plant medicines and in partnership with the universe and everything that's available with the universe to help people truly heal and to really design a life that feels most fitting to what their soul has been longing to step into, who we've always been, but we've been covering up with all of these layers around who we thought we should be based on the programming that our society has fed us. And it takes a lot of courage to step into to these like psychotropic experiences, I think, a lot of people by now have probably heard of ayahuasca and they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe that sounds kind of scary. And also, there's such beauty that lives on the other side of that fear because, again, getting to see yourself in these moments really allows a deeper type of compassion and empathy to come forward. And so, the work that I do with clients is to really help with the intention setting beforehand, sometimes coaching while they're, working with the medicines. And then afterward, now that you've had these, incredible downloads from the universe and from these plant medicines, how do you take the information that you've received and insert yourself back into a life that feels really good and fitting? Because, with all of these downloads, you've now outgrown the pot that you were planted in. And so it can be really uncomfortable at first, right? Like you go through these experiences and you want to be understood by the same people who understood you before, but you're not the same person. And you've now
Mhm.
allowed new parts of yourself to be known. And so I work with clients to really help them to step into themselves unapologetically, to regain their confidence, to find that clarity in the new version of themselves, and to create a life that feels cosmically designed.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because you're right. For some people, this can be very beneficial. It's a very unique way of opening yourself to different thoughts and different ways of being. So it's lovely that you're able to help people who choose to do a path like this in order to walk them through it, to walk them through the whole process. So that's very fascinating.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's not where I thought I would be, truthfully, that this is just a part of me stepping into my path unapologetically. I mean, it was actually the medicine that working with ayahuasca that drove me down this path, where I started to see more and more the path that I was on and all of these very structured ways of living and how they have benefited me, but also hurt me in some regard, and how my work as a trauma informed coach, and my experience with my own trauma and my deep
Mhm.
empathy, how all of these things really have compounded to create the right environment for me to hold space for people, especially in this sort of environment, to have such an open mind and an open heart and an open container to be able to embrace all shapes, sizes, however you want to be. And so it's truly beautiful work. And it's such an honor to be able to work in this space. And the fact that it's becoming more and more discussed in our even Western society is
Mhm.
such a blessing because this medicine is truly, truly powerful and also requires such a level of deep reverence and understanding. And so, if anybody who's listening to this is interested or would like to learn more, by all means, please reach out. I know that this is a confusing world and not everyone is called to this space. But if you have started to feel curious, like consider that the invisible thread that you may be called to work with these types of medicines. So
Absolutely. And we'll put all of your contact information in the show notes so that way people are very easily able to find you and work with you, which I hope people do, especially if they have questions, to please reach out to you and see what else is out there. Because you're right, you don't know until you try something new to see if it is able to work for you. And
exactly.
everything's quite complicated right now. I feel like we've chosen a very complicated path in order as a society to figure out better systems. There's absolutely better systems and better ways of being. So that it's part of also the work that I'm doing with finance because I'm really passionate in trying to help people understand the system in order to not be held back by it or bogged down by it. I don't agree with the system. We absolutely could have better financial systems and other systems out there. So for me, I'm trying to help people get through it as quickly as they can to get on to more meaningful things because to me, it's all about like the arts and community. That's what I want people to focus their time on. I don't want people to be held back by this silly financial system that we have. So I'm so happy to find other professionals and experts like yourself that help people think about the differences that are out there, the different ways of being, that it's okay to be open to all these different processes or all these different systems because there are better ways. Yeah.
I completely agree. And I love what you're doing in the financial space as well. I think, these structures, while they are suboptimally set up or set up maybe to benefit the few and not the
Hmm.
many, they are super important to understand. And I think information is power, right? Like, I mean,
Yes.
there's so much information out there. And you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started the podcast, but this, like, there's so much benefit to looking at the science and looking at the spirituality and also being in tune with our own information, our bodily information, our emotional sensations. Every piece of information that we're fed, we have the power to be able to do something with. It does, of course, require some level of discernment, like how involved do we want to be? What feels right for me? What path do I want to walk? But also, being able to navigate and thoughtfully decide for yourself is such a beautiful part of the human experience.
Mhm.
And so many people are living in this autopilot mode where they are continuing to do what they've always seen or
Mhm.
continuing to day in and day out live pretty much the same type of experience. And they end up in a position where they just feel stuck and trapped by the life that they've created for themselves. And,
Exactly.
by everything that you're saying, it's like by starting to entertain and ask some different questions, you can get different answers. And, it's not to say that, when I'm talking about these psychotropic medicines, it's not to say that Western medicine hasn't figured anything out. It's to say that, there might be a beautiful combination of entertaining what these thousands of year old tribes have also understood to be true,
Mhm.
what these, from the ground intelligent entities may also bring to your life. And again, it's not everyone's path, but I do think that it's beautiful to be able to try on a different way of showing up. And at the very least, you're like, well, that wasn't for me, moving on, but you
Exactly.
won't know unless you're willing to take those risks on yourself.
Exactly. I completely agree. It might not be everyone's path, but it's more fair to let people know that it is a possible path because for some people it can be very helpful.
Yes, absolutely. I think the one other thing, just thinking more about these psychotropics that I wanted to mention is, what I've seen in this space is that people can really embrace healing in a slightly different way. I think in a lot of Western medicines, one of the traps that people will fall into is that they continue to see a doctor, continue to receive medication, and it's really helping them to soothe symptoms rather than to address the root. And
Hmm.
so much of these root ailments are actually very deeply embedded in traumatic moments or things that have been that are manifesting in symptoms and inflammation in the body or other
Hmm.
challenges. And so I say all of this because I just want to make sure that anybody who is listening to this who may have felt like they're dealing with an ailment that they're just like, there's no hope for this. It's possible that there are other alternatives that have not been, that you've not been exposed to, or that may not be, part of what your doctor has been talking to you about. This is not to say don't listen to your doctor, please do. But there are other avenues and other ways that I've seen a lot of people regain control over their lives and release things that are no longer serving them.
Very much. And that's such an important conversation for women, especially just because of all the systemic issues that women specifically face in the traditional medical field, unfortunately. I'm so happy to see more and more people talking about this and sharing that online because I love the community-based efforts that are taking place in order to help people find out more, to drill down into what's these very complicated issues that women can face, unfortunately, just because we're more immunosuppressed and all these different complicated things that can happen to us. So it's incredible that you're able to share this potential path that really could be helpful for people. So thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thank you for asking about it.
Absolutely. I think another thing that's really curious to me about this specifically is that you're able to help many different types of people, as you were saying. So it might be people who are seeking potentially medical-ish, medical tangential help or a spiritual based practice, all the way over to very high performing professionals that are just trying to be more open-minded or have a more holistic and well-rounded human experience, if you will, and try to get out of their overdrive on just focusing on work or their businesses. And I was just really curious if you see a theme with people whenever they come to you for assistance. So regardless of maybe their background or their what they think their intentions are, is there a common theme that you see across the people that you're helping whenever they come to you specifically for this type of work or assistance?
Oh, this is such an interesting question. Thank you for asking this. I don't know that I've really deeply thought about this, but as you were asking it, I was like, wow, there really is. I think that the basis, like the foundational experience that really ties everything from like your high performer executive who has been chasing money for, as long as she can remember, to the musicians that I work with, to people who have chronic ailments, is really this consistent story that they tell themselves about needing to run from the self. So I work with a lot of people pleasers, perfectionist types, and really, these are individuals of all shapes and sizes, of all age ranges as well, and varying levels of spirituality, who have been taught by society or by their programming or by their first loved ones, their first relationships that they've ever had, that their way of survival is to abandon the self. It's to chase money, it's to chase accolades, it's to give other people what they need at the cost of their own self. So to truly start to self-abandon in all of these other ways. And so working with such a wide variety of people and seeing our human tendency is to abandon ourselves when that has been mirrored to us. When our first and earliest relationships are ones where we have felt like we could only receive love and connection if we were a certain way. And so we start to trade bit by bit our authentic nature, our authenticity for the connection that we're looking for. And we start to leave parts of ourselves on the shelf. And as we continue doing that, we reinforce this pattern that like, these are the 5 things about me that can't be loved. So I'm going to forget that they even exist. And I'm going to move in this direction instead. And I've been there myself, right? I feel like life is just a continuous process of unraveling and revisiting and finding more compassion for all of the parts of yourself that want to exist. But yeah, I really see that as a common theme. And I won't go as far as to say that this is like just a part of the human experience, but I really do think that so many of us, especially the high performing archetype and personality, have learned to chase performance rather than existence.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It really is such a shame that regardless of where we're coming from, we seem to lose ourselves along the way because it depends, because you're right. If you come from a scarcity background, you don't have time. You don't have time to stop and breathe. You have to keep pushing yourself and pushing your circumstances in order to survive, to be quite frank about it. And then if you end up being a high performer, even if you have enough financial resources, for whatever reason, you convince yourself that you have to also go, go, go in order to keep achieving more or maintain the level that you're at. So it really is such a shame that regardless of where we're coming from, we are unable in our current system to just take a breath in order to say, okay, I need to pause whatever's happening right now in order to recenter myself, to ground myself, and to, like you said, not have to put pieces of yourself away in order to somehow go into survival mode, whatever that survival mode may look like. So I really hope people are able to find you now and, just from this piece of podcast and really decide to do something to have you help them through a path that they might be on in order to achieve better and bigger things and maybe recollect some of those pieces of themselves in case that triggered something for them and saying, okay, there's a new and better way that I can live and not have to continue to put pieces of myself on a shelf, to use that analogy.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. It's so challenging because especially if you've gotten to a specific stature in life, you start to convince yourself that the only way I can be successful is by doing what I've always done. And if doing what you've always done is built on a foundation of self-abandonment, it is challenging to convince yourself like there's got to be another way. And taking that bet to be able to invest in yourself and to start doing the work and to shift your life even 1 degree. And that 1 degree shift is going to mean a completely different trajectory over time. But for so many people, it's scary. It's scary to look in the mirror and it's scary to admit that you need some help and some support in order to get to where you want to be. Because especially for certain types, I think especially for women, asking for help can be really challenging. And, being willing to admit where you feel like you might need a little bit more self-love or might need a little bit of assistance to get to the point in life that you want to get to. And I guess going back to what we had talked about earlier is, when you have convinced yourself that accomplishment is how you gain everything that you've been looking to gain in life, investing in yourself feels like a frivolous thing to do because you're like, well, I don't want to invest in myself. I just want to get here. I want to get to this other external goal. And also, as we continue trying to run to that next external goal, we're continuing to run from ourselves. So being willing to really step into and revisit ourselves and inviting in that self-love and just acknowledging like that there are pieces of ourselves that we're not honoring completely. Maybe we feel stuck. Maybe we've done everything right and it just still doesn't feel totally good, or something just feels off. Being willing to honor that and stop accepting fine or good enough as though that's like truly bringing joy and fulfillment into your life, because there is more out there and your internal voice is trying to shout that at you, but you've been, silencing it for so many years that you don't even acknowledge that that's what's going on.
Yes, exactly. Even if we're aware that something is a positive change, unfortunately, change is still involved. And that can be where some of the resistance comes in, just because for whatever reason, us as humans really dislike change. So it's just getting over that little hump of understanding this is going to be to my benefit. It is worth it. So even if it might feel a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, just because it's unknown. And again, we tend to shy away from things that are unknown to us. It's quite temporary. It's just a little blip in time, and it's definitely worth it in order to get yourself to a healthier, more robust space that is much more sustainable, that is much more comfortable and to your benefit in the long run.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, just to really double down on what you're saying, I feel like so many of us are afraid to dream big because if we were to dream big, it wouldn't align with the current reality that we're living.
Mm.
And so, really, the work that I do with my clients is to be like, to figure out exactly where each individual person is
Mm.
and what they want for their lives. And maybe it's fulfillment, maybe it's, greater sex life or more confidence or any number of things, more money, like a more successful, more lucrative business, any number of things. And to figure out, okay, what are the obstacles that are preventing us from getting there? How can we step into a place where you've already achieved that and create less ambiguity around what that future state is going to look like? So
Mm.
it's really a partnership between me and my client to figure out, how do we design a future life that is so compelling that you can't wait to step into that? And it feels, because we work together and we start to make this a reality, it feels more exciting than the comfort of your past and your current that was not even feeling good to you anymore.
Yes, and I'm so excited right now because I feel like you intuitively picked up on my next question because you kind of just introed into it, which is very exciting to me. Because I was going to ask you next, what is something that you first look for whenever you begin to help people and you begin to work with them, whenever it comes to helping them be really specific about where they might be misaligned or even potential that they haven't seen in themselves before? Like, how do you begin that process with clients? Because I feel like if people that might help answer this unknown piece for some people of what this beginning stage looks like. And I feel like that might help people be more willing and take that first step to work with you like much, much quicker when they know how to get started, really.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that you took this here because I do feel like this is so important and not often something that people ask
Mm.
or even though they intuitively do want to know.
Mhm.
The major things that I look for is really just who you're showing up as. What's the language that you use? We develop context together in the free consultation that I provide and also my first session with a new client, where I start to get a really good feel for different areas of their life that they'd like to most focus on. What is the context there? What does this area of life mean to that person? How do they show up as they're talking about this particular area of life? So it's both in their spoken vocabulary, their body language, their energy, maybe certain gestures, their procedural memory and their somatic movement, all of these pieces that I'm paying attention to and holding space for. And, really my goal is to continue to reflect them back at them.
Mm.
So that way they can start to build a clearer picture for who they are showing up as and start to see themselves and their gifts more clearly. Because as people, like we're never going to know what a room is like without us in it. We are in that room and we're looking around and we see other people and we see how they respond to us, but we don't know the energy that we have. We don't know the frequencies that we're giving out or the influence that we have on other people. We never get to see that clearly. And so many people are in relationships that are not accurate mirrors for who they really are. They are with someone who may be downplaying their skill set or maybe just kind of reflecting back what they want rather than like who their partner truly is. And so it's a really rare moment in time where you have someone who's just there for you. I mean, I'm sure as with your background and the conversations that you've had, you get to be that space holder for a lot of people as well. But really, my goal in sitting with a client is to meet them exactly where they are, to see them so abundantly clear that I can also see where their superpowers are nested in hidden pockets of their being and maybe how we access them together. And my goal is not to, force someone into the splits. My goal is to gently provide stretches and to pay attention to my client and what they are saying and what they aren't saying to identify how we can navigate their internal journey together. And I do that through, somatic movement, through introspection, through conversation, through, lots of different modalities and I ease my clients into all of these things, right? So it's super important that my client feels safe and feels comfortable and that trust is the foundation for everything. So I'm not someone who's going to push my process on someone. I work with clients to figure out like, what is their process and how can I use everything that I know and, my strategic partnership with the universe and my strategic partnership with my clients and my intuitive abilities and my understanding of neuroscience and coaching and trauma and all of these things. And how do I marry them all together to show up and help my client take one next courageous step? So
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so exciting because you're right. Some people might not even be aware of what they've done to where they have, like you said, a superpower or some type of piece of themselves that needs to shine. That's what needs to shine brightest in the room because depending upon what's happened to us over time, we might have been taught in some way to hide that about ourselves. And that's the missing piece. Like that's what's missing for people. So I'm so excited to hear that that's part of the process because I feel like that would be really critical for a lot of people to tap into and to bring back out to make sure that that's what's shining. And I really hope that people go back and listen to that piece of this podcast again because it really struck me what you said about you never know what a room looks like unless you're in it. Like that's very profound to me. So I really hope people go back and listen to that again because this energy and this type of wisdom is really, really needed right now. So thank you very much for highlighting that.
yeah, absolutely. And thank you for calling that out. I really do appreciate that. It can be so challenging to be a human and to live,
Mhm.
right? And, from our first experiences on this planet where we are thrown into an environment that feels cold and overstimulating, and there's just so many pieces to all of it. And we're constantly collecting information about our outside world, but we so regularly abandon the self and look outside to
Yes.
who we should be. And there's so much beauty and power in seeing ourselves clearly and in owning our special light and in being willing to be different and be unique so that way we can illuminate a path that only we can. But we have to be willing to do that and to ask different questions and seek out support if we need it.
Yes, absolutely. I think something that I wish people better understood is that anytime they look internal to themselves and they see something that is a little uncomfortable or they wish they would have done things differently, that should be looked at without judgment and without shame because that means you've grown. That means that you've identified, you now know how to do better in the future. And I feel like people are unfortunately taught to be pretty hard on themselves and to use judgment or shame, and that's really unfortunate. Anytime we look internal and we're now aware, we're now self-aware that there are better ways and there are new and different ways to respond to things in the future, this should be seen as positive or at minimum neutral, just to know that that's growth. And so I feel like sometimes that might be a reason why people might be a little reluctant in order to do this inner work, is because it's very shame based, unfortunately, in our current system, or at least in a Western perspective, I should say. So I'm so happy. I hope people are much more hopeful in hearing about your expertise and the way that you're able to offer people help and to work with people, because this is needed. It's very much a benefit and a positive thing in order for people to move ahead with their lives and not hold themselves back in some way. So I really hope people are also taking hope from what you're sharing as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. And I know that when people think about doing that internal work or going on internal journeys, that there is fear that comes forward. And to what you're saying, there is shame around who we are, and we've learned that that is the way that we should judge ourselves, so no one else has to do it for us. We've learned that that loss of connection that we experience when we first started to be ourselves in this world was not worth it, and which is why it's so easy to self-abandon, right? And also, I would love for people to also entertain that rather than it being so scary, it could also be like falling in love with yourself all over again. That as you start to see these things about yourself that you previously thought were shameful in an adult frame of mind, you can invite forward a new love for parts of yourself that you didn't think were lovable. And you have the capacity now to change your relationship with you because you are quite literally thinking and feeling differently about who you are. And it's such a beautiful experience to fall in love with yourself all over again. I mean, there, in my opinion, nothing more beautiful than falling in love with the one person that you will spend every day on this planet with, right? Like, if we were to say, oh, after this conversation, you're going to fall more in love with your partner, everyone would be like, yeah, I got this. But when
Hmm.
you say falling in love with yourself, people are like, oh, is that like conceited? Is that selfish? And it's like, oh, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be an obsession with the self, because then that's like an overcompensation, that's ego. But to really love yourself so much so that you're willing to do the hard thing and to see yourself clearly and to show up for you, such a beautiful thing. And then you take that into every room you enter.
Absolutely. That's so lovely. Thank you very much for sharing that, because you're right. You have to know how to be your own best cheerleader so that you can recognize it in others as well that are intimate to your life, because that's important. That's very important for healthy relationships with others, to make sure that you know what it looks like to take care of yourself so that you can help others do that appropriately as well, with what's to your benefit, what's healthy just across the spectrum of relationships, whether it's a self relationship or a relationship with others. So I love what you're sharing. This is so needed. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm actually a little bit curious. What you said sparked another question for me. Are there any myths that you've encountered about success or about healing in your process? Anything that you wish people would know a little bit more about, or potentially unlearn even?
Hmm. I think that most people, when they think about healing and success, they think that it's going to be hard. I think when people think about healing, they think about grief healing, they think about loss, they think about pain. They don't often think about joy and pleasure. There is a whole there's a whole realm of healing available when people stop abandoning joy and play and pleasure as a part of their lives. Like there's creative potential in these beautiful spaces. I mean, we acknowledge that kids need play and that that's really important for their brain development and all of that. We abandon that as adults. We think that everything needs to be monetized. We think that every interaction needs to have a 12-step plan in front of it. And ultimately, we rob ourselves of that presence that we get when we just have unapologetic fun and we invite more laughter into our world and we expand our relationship with play as well. And so I bring this up because I think for a lot of people, what's really missing is not necessarily more brute force method or like spiritual surgery, but really like an expansion of the self to invite more fun into your world, because it's not just about one milestone or the next. It's like life exists in all of these small moments that is in between the milestones. And usually you see this a lot with high performers. They have these milestones, they reach them, and then they're like, oh, now what? Because they haven't learned to slow down and enjoy themselves. They haven't like learned that life can be a beautiful, creative unfolding. And so instead, they just treat life as a series of check boxes and milestones. And we're not supercomputers. We weren't designed to feel that way. So really like leaning into what type of living feels good for you is an important part of this healing process as well.
Absolutely. I cannot stop shaking my head. Yes, I agree with everything 100%. It is so important because you're right. I don't even know where to begin. Like, it's so important to make sure that you derive pleasure from all across the spectrum of what it means to be human. And you're right that people really lose that along the way. They feel like they have to have output, they have to be productive. And there are so many various ways to derive meaning from your daily life. And I really also emphasize people to reconnect with this and to remember this from an earlier simpler time, if you want to use this phrase from your life that people just kind of forgot. So it's amazing to know that you're helping people reconnect with this because it's a really critical part of just being human to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of people who are interested in growing their finances, there's a mentality of like, I need to accumulate so I can have more. I need
Mm,
to accumulate so I can have more. And look, like I'm not trying to say that it's wrong to want. Like, I think we're in a society that really tries to encourage you to want. Like, it's like, look at this makeup, it's going to make you feel better. And then you try the makeup and you're like, okay, like, but I still don't feel better. Right.
hmm
So there's lots of these false promises about what more accumulation can lead to. And I think that there's such a deep importance to really know like what you're doing it all for and to be mindful of your own tendency towards self-abandonment, even when it comes to accumulating things and convincing yourself that you do need more. And this is
hmm
not my way of saying like don't manage your finances or be thoughtful about where you spend. It's my way of saying that calculating your life down to the microsecond so that way you can use every bit of your energy toward trying to chase a financial goal may sound interesting to some on paper to be spending every microsecond in pursuit of some sort of ambitious goal. But ultimately, once you achieve that goal, you might find that it's not actually as fulfilling as you were hoping. And so being willing to really sit with yourself, to appreciate what you have and to soak in your current level of abundance and to expand yourself and try on a new way of living and to get more playful with life. And again, it's like there's this inherent seriousness, I think, when we think about success. I know I felt it for a very long time where when I thought about success, I like cut my hair all short and I was like, okay, business savvy, like let's do this like they do in the movies, and I started playing a role. And for many years, for like decades even, I was that way. And then I was like, oh, this is just like horribly boring. And then I looked up and I looked at, people who I really looked up to at work. And I was like, do I want to actually be like them?
Mm,
And it just occurred to me like, gosh, everybody seems so unhappy. Like there's
right.
got to be a different way to invite more of myself forward and still have the money that I want to have and still have the life that I want to have and to not always feel like I am chasing and climbing and clawing just to survive. Like there's got to be a way to just spread my wings and allow the wind to pick me up.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think another the way to look at this as well is play is critical to us. It's part of what makes us human, but we also never quite know what's in store for us in the future. And so, as much as I wish I could just, wave a magic wand and overnight everyone could just be financially comfortable, whatever that may mean to each person. But you never quite know what else is going to happen in the future, meaning you have to do the best that you can right now to enjoy your life and to figure out what does that mean for you truly? Like what aligns with your values? What is meaningful to you? How would you like to spend time playing and having a good time as best you can? Because of course, money opens up more options for us, but we need to do what we can in the moment to enjoy what we have now as we continue to do other types of objectives. And if that includes building better finances and accumulating more wealth for yourself, then have at it. Like that's great because again, that opens up more opportunity for you. But there is more to life. There's more meaning to life. So I do think it's important for people to do what they can to identify with that in the moment and to figure out what is play for me? Like, how do I obtain more and different meaning from life, whether it's just for myself to be self-fulfilling or what it means for my community, like who you want to do this with and to enjoy life with as well.
Yes, I love that. I love that. It reminds me, I had a client who, when we first started working together, he had this vision. He was like, I just want to have my yacht and I want to have 12 of my best friends. And I just want to, like, I have this vision of being able to enjoy and all of that. And we worked together for many months. And ultimately, what ended up coming out of this wasn't that he even wanted a yacht, it was just that he wanted the connection and the freedom. And it's so interesting to me because, I feel like the more that you go inward and the more that you're willing to really get clear on why it is that you want what you say you want, the more you might actually find that your goals are taking you away from the thing that you're looking for. So if you're looking for freedom and connection, great, we can invite that in now. And so that way, this is not to say you don't need the yacht. It's just to say that, like, once you have the yacht, you also have the connection and the freedom as a part of your lived experience. Like, we don't have to wait for that milestone to start inviting that forward. But I think for so many people, they create these goals that are in service of a bigger goal. And the interim goals actually take them away from all of these crucial components to the vision that they're creating.
Absolutely. It's so exciting to know that you're able to help people be much more clear about what it is that really matters to them and what they're attempting to go after. Because you're right, I feel like it's too easy to just get lost along the way.
Hmm. Life is very confusing in that way. And,
Yes.
they always talk about how the path to growth isn't linear, but you don't realize that it's like a circle, right? It just takes
Hmm.
you all around and everywhere you sometimes don't want to be. And
Uh-huh.
just as an opportunity to examine some of your growth edges, some of your, like how do we stretch ourselves in all of these different directions and embrace what life is teaching us in this current moment.
Very much. Are there any other last tools or words of wisdom that you have on what helps people come to this point, come to this very important point of wanting to be more aligned with themselves in order to tap into other ways of being, other and better ways of being that are out there that you're able to help people with?
Good question. I think so often, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but when we think about where we invest our time and our resources, our precious time, which is truly our most valuable currency, we think about the relationships that we have with other people. We think about work. We think about money. We think about our kids. We think about, any number of things. But it is so rare for people to really consider themselves in that same breath. And as I mentioned before, like, your relationship with you is the most powerful relationship that you will ever have. And it does inform and has the ability to change the relationships that you have with every other area of life. And so, when you think about investing in your relationship with your partner, your relationship with your kids, or any other relationship, I think it's really important that we're willing to invest in ourselves and willing to lean into what we truly need to fill our cups. That way we can give it to other people. And that way we can show up more fully and we can be the mirror that other people deserve. And the more compassion that we can hold with our own lived experience, the more we can more freely give compassion out to other people. Because it's often the things that we reject about ourselves that bother us about other people or that get under our skin. And so it's just a truly beautiful thing to be willing to invest in yourself. And it is such a gift that you give to other people without their knowing. Because once your life is touched and once you know what you are made of, you want to share it with the world. You want other people to experience you. And it doesn't need to be in like a luxury sort of sense where you're constantly trying to impart your wisdom on people. It could really be just in terms of space holding and in terms of showing up and having more healed relationships and being willing to invest in conversations that you never had or leading by example. So all of this is to say that, like, if you are on the fence about investing in yourself, you are worth the risk. You are worth the time, the money. You are worth your own energy. And that is, in my opinion, the absolute best gift that you can possibly give yourself and those you love.
Absolutely. This is so exciting. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. Where can people find you? How can they work with you?
You can find me through any social media channel, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or through my website. And you can find me at Ray of Sunshine, TCC. So that's Ray of Sunshine, TCC, as in the conscious community is what that stands for. And my website is www.rayofsunshine.tcc.com. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, book a free consultation if this calls to you in any way, shape, or form, and we can see if it feels like a good fit. My whole life and my heart and everything that I am is so dedicated in this mission of helping people to step more into themselves and feel more confident, more fulfilled, more at ease. And so if my energy calls to you or if this conversation speaks to you, then definitely book that time and we can see if it feels aligned.
Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom with everyone. I really hope this has helped touch people and give them hope in order to get in contact with you and work with you, because this work is very much needed. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brie. It's been such a pleasure.
I want to thank you so much for joining me this week on Forecasting for Success, and let you know that you can read the transcript for each podcast episode on my website, which is linked below in the show notes. I've also included the link to send me your money questions if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast at forecastingforsuccess.com/podcast. And if you're ready to get started on improving your financial literacy and developing your own personalized money plan, I encourage you to join my Forecasting for Success community, where I teach you everything you need to know about budgeting, how to choose your retirement number, how to invest in the stock market, and so much more. I go live in the community each month to check in on your progress and help answer any questions you may have. And it's a supportive community where you can also check in with other members and learn from their experiences as well. I hope you take good care of yourself, and I'll talk to you next week.